Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this really neat double-decker outdoor plant hanger. So to get started, I will go over the materials I'll be using. This particular project will require, I would say, a different type of cord. Typically, you can find macrame cord, at your local craft stores. They're usually made out of cotton. But if you live like I do, the weather is crazy and cotton will just not hold up. So I found some outdoor polycord. You can usually find it, I would say, in the camping section. I found this in an automotive section at my hardware store. Sometimes you can find paracord at craft stores. But as long as you find something that is semi-flexible, because it is kind of difficult to tie the knots, and then it's outdoor friendly, I would recommend. And I'll go over that more in a later bit. I also grabbed two 8-inch pots. They are made out of plastic. I would probably recommend plastic pots because terracotta can be pretty heavy. And if it's windy or, just different conditions, you don't want your plant hanger kind of swinging around outside and break your pot. And then I'm also using a little wooden ring so that I can hang it up, and of course, scissors. So this is a clearer view of the cord that I found. I am not going to attempt to pronounce it, but it is used for like camping with tents, boating. Like I said, I found this in the automotive section. I did have a hard time finding it in bulk, so I ended up buying three bundles of it that were 75 feet in length. Now, for lengths for the project, you will need to cut 8 pieces of cord that are 8 yards in length each. So it is a pretty long, kind of ridiculous project. Alright, so to get started, I have attached all 8 of my cords to my ring, and the ring is in the direct middle of all of my cords. And if you watched my multicolored plant hanger tutorial, I'm going to follow the almost exact same pattern. So I'll be using that to kind of compare. So to get started, this will kind of be an accelerated tutorial, but we are going to start with a gathering knot to combine all of our cords onto the ring. Now this is me talking from the future. This cord is very slippery, and I did have kind of a hard time kind of getting this first gathering knot situated. The cord is also very stiff and not super flexible, so you can kind of enjoy me struggling with the gathering knot for a few seconds. It does make very tight knots though, so it's good for stability for sure. And don't feel bad if you struggle, because I know I sure did. I did try to wrap it a few times around extra more than I normally would, just for security purposes. But like I said, it's can be quite slippery at first if you're not used to working with like a poly type of cord. And I would recommend tightening as tight as possible, since it will be outside. It'll get knocked around by the wind and elements and whatnot, so a few extra tugs here and there will not hurt anything. And once you're satisfied with your gathering knot, you can just go ahead and snip those ends. And then we are ready to start the next part of the tutorial. So this project will have 4 different arms. And like you can see, we're going to start with square knots to make 4 separate arms. And that'll be the first part of the arm. So you'll want to find 4 cords that are kind of close together that you can start your square knots with. And I would kind of recommend kind of untangling the cords as you go. And even, again, this is me talking from the future, I would recommend separating out each arm cords and kind of like binding them together. Because it is so long, they get easily tangled. And I would say as a time saver, just to separate your cords out as best you can. And so our first step is just to make some square knots. These will just be your normal, typical, standard square knots. And yes, pro tip, detangle ahead of time. Because it starts out as a ridiculous length of cord. And so you can start your square knots from the left or right. Just out of habit, I've just always started from the left. And then you'll want to make sure to give it kind of a good tug, just to make sure it's tight initially. And then you will complete your square knot. And from there, you'll just keep doing square knots until you get to your desired length. I ended up doing 11 on each arm, but that would depend on the thickness of your cord. So like on my cotton one, on the one next to it, I think I did like 15 square knots. So it just kind of depends on length, on how long you want it to be. But once you have that desired length, you're good to go. I would say it's about 8 inches in length for the square knots. And I will leave you here and I will finish these square knots. I'm back and I have completed my square knots to my desired length. Like I said, I did 11 on this particular arm, and that was just kind of based on the thickness. So I tried to be around the same length as my other tutorial that I did. It's close. And so from here, because the cord is so long and I want to not detangle every single time, I'm going to start the next step on this arm in particular, which will be the spiral knot section. And so I'm going to do kind of a wraparound. So these middle 2 cords are going to be my working cords. So I'm going to take them and put them behind the current working cords and bring them behind those guys. And then I'm going to make the first half of a square knot that way. This will save you on excess waste for cord, because if we had kept using that working cord originally, you would just run out eventually. And so when you're doing that wraparound, I would recommend just tightening as much as you can, pulling those inner cords through, trying to get them straight as possible. But I will say with this particular cord, it was kind of hard to get things straight because it is so stiff. And then from here, I am just going to complete some spiral knots. If you don't know how to do spiral knots or any of these knots mentioned, please check out one of my playlists. I have Macrame for Beginners that show the different knots. So here's an example from the completed one. And I'm just going to keep going until I get to the desired length. I like to do the length about the same size as the square knots that I did up above. So you'll see it's roughly the same length. Alright, I'm going to begin that. And like I said, you're just going to keep doing your spiral knots until you get to your desired length. Should be about 8-9 inches-ish, just depending how big your square knots are. And you'll just want to keep them kind of uniform, just so you don't run out of cord at the very end, essentially. So I'm just going to keep doing these spirals. If you're not familiar, you just do 1/2 of a square knot each time. You don't complete it. You just tie from the same side each time, and it makes a spiral. And while you're doing your knots, let me know in the comments, do you like to listen to anything when you're doing macrame? Do you like to watch TV? I'm a fan of like alternative rock, which does not seem very fitting, but I listen to that, and I usually watch like reality TV and stuff like that, just kind of mindless things to listen to when I'm working on this. So let me know. I'm curious, what do you like to listen to or watch as you're doing your knots? And yes, another pro tip, and I will repeat this, make sure to detangle if you can, because this cord is so long. Okay, and I'm just going to keep going until I have my desired length. I will see you soon. Okay, I am back. I completed my spiral knots. To complete this arm, you'll see it's roughly the same size as my other square knots. It worked for me. I got tired by the end of that because this cord is so stiff. Well, good news, you completed your first arm. Bad news, you have 3 more to go on this first section. So what you'll want to do is just separate out 4 more cords that are close together and repeat the same process. And I did want to show you kind of a close-up of the end of this cord. It is wrapped in like a synthetic some type of material, and the inside is also like plastic. It almost feels like styrofoam, kind of rubber-ish. I don't really know what it's made out of, if I'm honest, but I just wanted to show you a little close-up here. Okay, well, happy knot tying. I will see you after you have your 3 other arms created. And we're back. So once you have finished your 4 different arms, all your square knots, all your spiral knots, it is time to do the webbing for where your pot will sit. So kind of a close-up, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be combining the arms with some square knots. Now your pot size will come into place, and just however many kind of nettings, knots you want will come into place. So now if you don't have it handy, this would be a good time to grab your pot just for sizing purposes. So you'll kind of want to slip it wherever you want it to sit. My personal preference, I kind of want it to sit like just below or just on the last couple square knots. And then to find the length, you'll grab your two ends of each arm and kind of roughly estimate where you want that knot to sit. So I'm just going to do kind of in the middle of the length of my pot, I think. And so like I said, you're going to want to grab two ends. So on your right arm, you're going to grab the first two left cords. And then on your left arm, you're going to grab the last two right cords. And using those four, you're going to make a square knot where you want that length. Or I guess that first kind of webbing knot to hit on your pot. And this is me talking from the future as well. This is also a good place to kind of detangle your cords if you can. Since you'll be combining multiple arms now, cords can get pretty tangled. Alright, so that knot will combine those two arms. And so from here, we're just going to take the remaining cords and combine all of those. So I'm going to take, on that left arm that we just did, I'm going to take the leftmost cords, and then I'm going to grab another arm, and I'm going to take the rightmost cords of that arm and combine those two with another square knot. And you'll want to try to do the best you can to get the same length in between your spiral knots and the square knot. And then to make it a little easier, I recommend just kind of turning your work. So depending how you have your cords suspended on, you can turn your work so you can access kind of the back half. So now I'm going to take the leftmost cords of that right arm. I'm going to take the rightmost cords of the left arm, and again, combine those two with a square knot. And it's just good to kind of measure to see if they're roughly the same size. You know, it's not going to be perfect. It's hard to be perfect, so don't worry about that. And then by this end, you should have two remaining cords on two arms, and you will combine those guys with a square knot. And so now you can see all 4 arms are combined together with square knots. And I'm going to grab my pot just to kind of double check sizing. One thing I did notice, I think with these pots, they're plastic, and then the cord kind of feels plasticky, so I did kind of have a hard time getting the pot in there, just friction wise. It was kind of strange. Normally I would do another row of square knots combining the cords to make another set of web, but I actually like how this looks personally. So instead of doing another row of web, I'm going to do a gathering knot now at the bottom to combine all of those where I have my hand placed. With this cord, because it is so stiff, I noticed it leaves quite a gap at the bottom, like you can see. Like, it's not really flush with the cord. At first I was a little off put by that, but honestly I think it's okay because it'll leave enough room for kind of drainage and other like water to pass through if needed, because these pots do have holes in the bottom of it. So depending, how you want it to be, if you want it to be flush or if you're okay with it kind of leaving a gap in the bottom, you'll just want to work a little bit more and try to get your gathering knot really tight. So I'm totally cool with this. I'm just gonna kind of make a mental note where I have my hand for the gathering knot. I'm gonna take my pot out. I mean, if you want, you could try to leave your pot in there to get a more accurate kind of knot, but I wouldn't recommend. It's kind of difficult. Okay, so I had to adjust the height of my suspension rod that I have up. So now I'm going to do the gathering knot. I'm going to kind of eyeball where I had my hand before. And once you are done with this gathering knot, you are done with the first half of your plant hanger. So I would recommend giving it, some good wraparounds just for stability. And then you'll just want to snip those ends. Once you're good, I would recommend placing your pot to double check you're okay with the length of your netting and kind of where your pot sits. Because this cord is so stiff, it was pretty difficult trying to undo a gathering knot. And like you can see, there is kind of a gap in between my pot and my cord, but I'm okay with that. Alrighty, so now is a good time to pause and adjust your gathering knot as needed. And once you're good to go, we can continue the tutorial. Alright, so I spent some time kind of adjusting my gathering knot, where I wanted my pot to sit, kind of the tightness and tension of the cord. So now all that's left is to snip these ends off of my gathering knot. And feel free to take your pot out. It's a lot easier to work with the cord once it's out. So I'm just going to snip these ends real quick of my gathering knot. All right, and so good news, you made it halfway through. You have your first pot holder of the plant hanger. And then here's kind of the inside of what the cord looks like as it unravels. I thought it was kind of interesting. So it's kind of like a weatherproof string material. I don't know. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what's inside, but I thought it was interesting. Alrighty, so that is the first half of the plant hanger. Good job, you did it. And now all we're going to do is just do it again. So you will complete your square knots and your spiral knots and your webbing, and that will be it. So we have this remaining cord left. It is a mess. I recommend separating out your cord again into your different arms. And happy knot tying. I will check back in once I'm done. Okay, I am back. I just wanted to show you the completed project that we've been doing. So I'm going to start at the top here. You had your gathering knot with your square knots, and then your spiral knots, the first netting part to hold your pot, and then your gathering knot. And then again, we repeated those steps. So you got your square knots, spiral knots, the netting, your final gathering knot. And I did leave a little bit of a tassel. Not necessary, I would say, with this cord because it is such a stiff cord. But I did want to show it does fray a little bit. And depending on the type of cord that you buy, so please do your research. But you can sometimes take like a lighter, and if you hold the flame on the ends of these, they'll actually kind of melt together. So I might try that. I'm gonna do some research. Please do your research. I just want to emphasize, I do not want you to start your project on fire. But if your cord does allow for like heat sealing, you can go ahead and try that. Otherwise, I honestly don't think it's a big deal to leave it frayed. Since it's gonna be outside, you know, you're kind of gonna want to expect some wear and tear as well. But thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Make sure to like and subscribe for more tutorials coming soon. Thank you.